Hello and welcome to Nithrania YouTube channel. My name is Branislav Berec, and in this video I'm going to preview a game called Sweetlands. Game designed by Totsuka Chuo, published by Uchiba Koya, a Japanese publisher. The game is coming to a crowdfunding campaign. You will find the start date and the link to the campaign in the description of the video. The game is designed for 1 to 4 players, plays in about 100 to 200 minutes, depends on the number of players in the game, and everything you're about to see in this video are prototype components, so the components are not final. Although if someone told me that this is the final copy of the game, I would be 100% happy. It looks gorgeous, the production is already fantastic. And Sweetlands is a kingdom where a lot of sweets are produced, and the king of this kingdom fell ill. He ate way too many of these sweets, and players are potential candidates for succession. So each player is given a land, a piece of land of this kingdom, and the goal is to bring this piece of land to prosperity, to happiness, and thus players can become the successor of this king and they can become new kings in this kingdom. Each player has a map of their kingdom, which is completely empty at the start of the game. You start exploring the land from your capital hexes, and by exploring you place these tokens, these tiles on the map, sometimes triggering additional bonuses. There are 4 types of terrain tiles in the game: forests, wheat fields, mines, and water areas which generate money. After you explore the area, you can start building the road to that area, and when you do, you can flip the tile, and that increases the production of that particular resource. And since we have 4 different types of terrain, we have 4 different resources: money, wheat, wood, and stone. The amount of resources you have available is indicated by these cubes. The big ones are 10 resources, middle ones are 5, and the smallest white ones are 1 resource. So currently here we have 9 pieces of wood. Those resources are obviously important because you will use them to build these buildings. There are 6 types of buildings in this game. Here we have cheesy tents. These are creamy puff houses. Here we have brownie buildings. Then we have these milk research labs. We have coffee shops with very stylish building tokens. And each character has this very special ice cream clock tower token, which is not built by spending resources, but by fulfilling these special conditions. Buildings can only be built on any of these flipped tiles, which means there is already a road leading to those tiles, and when you do, you increase the production of that particular resource. And that's not all. By spending wheat, you can produce bread, and that is indicated on this food track, and as long as this food track token reaches the spaces with these cookie rabbits, you can also place these cookie rabbits into your buildings, so you can inhabit them. You don't need to spend any resources to place these cookie rabbits. They also unlock additional bonuses, and once they are happily placed in the building, they generate a lot of victory points at the end of the game. Furthermore, if you create a contiguous area with 3 different types of buildings, you create a city. The more cities you have, the more city points you gain. So when you build buildings, you have to be very careful, because when you combine 2 smaller cities into 1 bigger city, maybe you create 1 big metropolis, however, you lose the number of city points, because now instead of 2 cities, you only have 1. Building those buildings not only increases your production, but also gives you a lot of immediate bonuses, which may further increase your production, or they may allow you to explore additional tiles or build roads. And when you build the last building from one of these 3 types, it also gives you additional victory points at the end of the game, based on the printed condition. The game is played over 5 rounds, and in each round there's an income phase and then the action phase. In the action phase, players take turns, and on your turn you can perform one of the main actions and any number of these free actions. The main actions are printed here on the main board. In a 3 and a 4 player game, there are these additional imitation boards. The actions here are usually duplicates of the actions on the main board. And the way you take actions in this game is quite unique. At the start of each round, players gain certain number of these action cards. It's 6 in the first round, it could be more later in the game. And if you want to take one of these actions, you have to spend certain number of cards. By spending the card, I mean you choose one of those cards and you have to discard it, which means you lose the card permanently. These boxes are called action areas, and if you are the first player to take an action in that area, take this action disc from the common supply, place it on the first available space, and then discard one card. These action discs don't belong to any player, they're simply in the general supply, and if any player wants to take the second action in the same action area, that player now must discard 2 cards, any 2 cards from their hand. As you can guess, if anyone wants to take this action for the 3rd time in the same round, that player would have to discard 3 cards, which is really expensive. If an action area only contains 1 spot, only 1 player can perform that action, and that player still has to discard 1 card. So you constantly have to make decisions which cards to use as payments for actions and which cards are going to be played for their effect. So your action cards are a very precious resource and you will have to use them efficiently, and therefore you will use these free actions quite a lot in this game. Similar to many other games, free actions will allow you to exchange one type of resource for another type, or even spend the card to gain additional resources, or spend the card and the resources to perform explore action or build a road action. But that's not the only way how to use the card. You can play the card on its own by paying the indicated costs, then gain the benefit in this white box, and then you can either leave it face up in front of you, because these symbols here indicate various types of cookies and sweets you have produced, and those may give you additional discounts or victory points or other bonuses. Or you can spend this diamond and automate the card. By automating, you slide it under your player board, and then anytime later in the game, when you trigger this icon, this is called industry bonuses, you get all the bonuses in that particular column, triggering those bonuses from top to the bottom. You trigger these bonuses even by building the coffee shop, because that uncovers that icon here, and again you trigger all those industry bonuses. Now let's talk about how you win this game, how you score victory points. There are actually 3 types of points in this game. These tokens represent the standard victory points. Here I have the situation for a 2-player game. You're not going to score a lot of these standard victory points during the game. After you build your own personal ice cream clock tower token, you may score victory points at the end of each round. And there is another board in the game in addition to all other boards. This is called a round support board. And based on the position of your marker, you may also score some victory points at the end of each round. Then the position of your marker has to change. Then these tokens represent city points. Remember, you score city points based on the number of cities you have on your map in your kingdom. That's why it is so important to build several smaller cities rather than a one big city. Because the more cities you have, the more city points you score at the end of each round. And then these tokens represent industry points. Industry points are indicated here on this industry board. And you have 2 machines here on the industry board, this orange one and the green one. At the start of the game you only have the orange one, and when you reach this space you also unlock the green one. When you move with your orange machine on this track, you unlock all these orange bonuses. When you move with the green machine, you unlock all the green bonuses. And at the end of each round, you sum up all these industry points you have reached with both of your machines. So with the orange one, it's 1, 2, and 3, and 4. With the green one, at the moment, it's only 1. So that's 5 industry points. These are scored at the end of each round, so the more you advance with these machines, the more points you score each round. And now, how it all comes together. These 6 tracks are called prosperity tracks. At the start of the game, each player has 1 marker in this starting position on each track. When you flip tiles in your kingdom and you get these bonuses, instead of increasing the production, you can move on one of these prosperity tracks. Here's a green heart symbol, which means you can move on one of these green tracks. You can get those symbols also in some other places in the game. And at the end of the game, the position of your markers on these tracks determine how many points you score for each particular area of the game. Here we have the number of tiles on your map, the number of cookie rabbits you have placed in the buildings, number of roads built, number of buildings built, number of automated carts, and the number of your industry points. As you move along the track, the victory points conditions are getting better. For example, if you are here, for every 2 industry points, you only score 1 standard victory point. However, at the end of the track, for each 1 industry point, you score 2 standard victory points. So basically you're coming from 0 or 0.5 victory point to 2 victory points for each industry point. So at the end of the 5th round, when the game is over, calculate the victory points for each player on each of these 6 tracks. This way you gain these standard victory points. The city points you have acquired are then multiplied by 2, so you score 2 points for each city point. You also score or lose victory points based on how many of these ports you have connected over the course of the game. To connect the port, you simply have to have tiles adjacent to the port. So here we have first, second, and the third port connected. The last one is not, so that would be -5 victory points. Only if you connect all 4 of them, you score 10 points. If you don't connect any of them, you lose 40 victory points, but if you play well, that's very unlikely to happen. So there's a lot going on in this game, but you can also achieve a lot, basically on every single turn. Unlike other games of this type, Euro games with worker placement mechanics, when you perform actions in Sweetlands, you place more components than usual, and this is such a clever idea. For example, normally when you build buildings in many other games, you usually build 1 building. Or when you explore, you can flip 1 tile. Just 1. Usually you place 1 component. In this game, when you explore, when you place these hex tiles, terrain tiles on the map, you place 3 of them at the same time during 1 action. When you build roads, you build 3 of them. When you build roads, you can flip tiles, usually 2, sometimes 3, which means you increase the production of 3 resources or same resource 3 times. When you build a building, again, when you build 2 buildings, you can increase the production of 2 different resources or twice the same resource. So on every single turn, you do a lot more than in many other games. And this is such a clever idea. I like it a lot because you develop your kingdom much faster than usual, than in many other games, and you can choose your direction. Do you need to bump the production of your wood significantly, so you increase the production of your wood 3 or 4 spaces? Or do you need to split it? Do you need a little bit of wood, a little bit of wheat, a little bit of stone, for example? And that's what you do on 1 action. This is such a clever design choice, and I'm wondering why other games are not doing the same thing. Because every time you make a turn, you feel like you have achieved something, you did something really visible on your player board. I also like that actions are simple. You place a tile and that's it. You build a road, maybe you flip the tile, and then you increase the production, and that's it. That's the action. You don't have to perform 3, 4, 5 steps and trigger additional bonuses, which may mean an additional 2 or 3 steps. You do trigger bonuses, you do chain some actions and bonuses, but all of them are simple. So I didn't get lost. I never got lost in this game performing my action as I sometimes do in some other games. Everything you do is easy to remember, easy to perform, and even when you trigger multiple bonuses, it's easy to keep track of what you do, what you still have remaining as your bonuses, and making choices and decisions is quick, so the turns can be very snappy, very quick, and when you know what you want to do, the game can actually flow much faster, so you can easily get down to, let's say, 2 hours in a 3 or a 4 player game. It is viable. I also like the visual design of this game. As you build your kingdom, as you cover the map with tiles and then buildings, and you build cities, the board looks more and more beautiful with every single turn, because when you build cities, these cities have to have different types of buildings, which means each city is quite unique, and if you imagine that you're walking in that city, everywhere you look, there's a different type of building, and it just looks beautiful. On top of that, the overall design, graphics design, which looks more like a cartoonish, comic type of graphics, this is so appealing to me. There are so many games out there that are very realistic, let me say, that have a realistic theme, either a farming theme or a industrial theme or a space theme. These themes are, I call it real life themes. This is finally a game with very playful, very joyful graphics, and I feel like I'm in some kind of a fairy tale, and a fairy tale kingdom that produces a lot of sweets. Even the buildings have a very nice design, especially these coffee shops which have a shape of a coffee bag, but also the ice cream clock tower, which is the ice cream turned upside down. It just looks so nice, so beautiful, so refreshing, and I enjoy looking at this game. I'm so glad that it doesn't have a realistic theme, but this kind of a comic, cartoonish theme. I enjoy it a lot. What I really appreciate as well are these different type of points. Not only you have the standard victory points, but you also have the city points and the industry points. And the number of standard victory points you get for the industry points is determined by how far you progress on the prosperity track. And that I like that a lot. Basically, it's the same thing as with many other areas of the game on those prosperity tracks. I would like to see something like that with the city points as well, because city points, you simply double them and that's the number of standard victory points you get. So I think the city point token is then a little bit useless, because every time you get a city point, you can simply get 2 standard victory points. So that seems to me a little unnecessary to have in the game, unless there will be something that that uses these city points. Maybe there are milestones, maybe there will be these final scoring tiles. In that case, it will make sense. As I said, I don't have these with this sample of the game. They will be included in the final version of the game. So if they refer to these city points, then it does make sense, and then I would appreciate it even more. And talking about the points, it may feel like a point salad, because you get points for almost everything in this game. And how many points you get is determined by how far you progress on the corresponding prosperity track. What I appreciate is that you don't get victory points for everything you do in the game, as in many other point salad games. In this game, when you do something, you perform actions, you build components on your map, on your player board, you don't get victory points as bonuses. You simply get additional resources, components, additional actions, and that's what I like about this game. At the end of the game, yes, you score almost everything in the game, and the way and how much you score is determined by your own decisions, but that happens at the very end of the game. You do score some victory points over the course of the game, but it is and it is not a point salad. For example, if I look at Agricola, one of my most favorite worker placement games, that is also potentially a point salad game, but you score everything, all the areas of your farm at the end of the game, and here you do something similar. However, the scoring is not predetermined. The scoring is dependent on your choices and on your decisions. So it may feel like a point salad, but it's not really a point salad. And I like that you make decisions how many points you're going to score for each area. And it's very important to make these decisions correctly, because it's important to find a turning point in the game where instead of increasing the production of resources, you actually start moving your tokens on these prosperity tracks. If you do it too early, you may miss out on the production and you may miss resources to further develop your kingdom. If you do it too late, you may have a lot of resources, but you will not score in a victory point. So finding this turning point is very important, and that's another part of the game which I like a lot. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the game can be long, especially your first, second game, or when you play with players who have not played the game yet. It can be long because there's a lot you can do. And to figure out what you need to do, what are the priorities, you may need some time to think about it. And especially when you look at your cards and you have so many options, so many good options in your cards, but you also need to do actions. Now you have to look at other players as well, because you need to figure out whether they're going to make some of these actions more expensive for you. If you do, which of these actions do you need to prioritize? Because if you don't, it will become more expensive. You will have to spend more cards on those actions. And these are all the decisions that you need to do. And that may take time, especially when you don't exactly know how to progress in the game. It can be overwhelming, and that's why it can be long. However, as you get to know the game better, you look at your resources, you know what you need to do, and it's easy to plan your moves. And as I said, when you perform the moves and turns can be very, very snappy and very quick. And that can be like in your second, third, fourth game, you can get down the playing time, I would say even 50% down compared to your first game. But when you play it for the first time, and when you play with the people who play it for the first time, be prepared that it can be long. And as I said, it can be overwhelming with all the options in the game, with all the options in your cards, all the available actions. It can be really, really overwhelming, especially when you play it for the first time. I remember my first game, first turn of my first game, I was like, what on earth am I supposed to do? There are so many things I can do. What should I focus on? Do I need to increase my prosperity tracks? Because it looks like it will take ages to get those tokens moving. But it's good to navigate new players that focus on the production, focus on increasing your production. So place some terrain tiles on the map, build some buildings, make sure that you use the bonuses to increase the production. Forget about the prosperity tracks at the start of the game. It's not needed. It's not going to give you anything useful. You will need to focus on that later in the game. And when players increase their production and they see that the resources are coming and they do have resources to perform actions, and they use free actions to convert some of the cards into more resources so that they can do the build the buildings and perform additional actions, then the engine starts going, and then people can easily get into the game. And that leads me to another great experience that I have with this game, is that you can achieve a lot. I've already said that earlier. You can achieve a lot in this game, and very quickly you start unlocking various bonuses, various areas. You have more cards that you can automate. You get additional industry points. You start building your cities. And almost on every second turn, I felt like I have achieved something. I have unlocked some bonuses. I have moved a little bit further on in the development of my kingdom. And that gives a lot of satisfaction during the game. It's not a satisfaction that the game gives you points and you are rewarded by points for something. No, you are rewarded by unlocking something. And that works really well. You can unlock your special building. You can unlock more slots. You can unlock additional actions, additional card that you have every single round. So all these little unlocks, all these little progressions, that happens on almost every second turn, and That's a lot of satisfaction. That's a lot. So even though it may feel overwhelming, even though it may be long, players have a lot of feeling, a lot of satisfaction that I have achieved something, I have moved something, I have unlocked something here, and that is a great feeling. So even though it can be overwhelming and long, it was still a lot of fun almost all the time. One thing which I don't really understand is why do I need to keep one card at the end of each round? Except for the last one, when you can play all the cards, but at the end of the first, second, third and fourth round, you must keep at least one card. You are not even allowed to take an action which would reduce your hand size down to 0. You cannot do that. You must keep at least one. It makes sense to discard down to 4 cards at the end of the round, because if you have way too many, then you are forced to discard. That makes sense. But it doesn't make sense. Why do I need to keep one? So I'm not allowed to use all the cards. Maybe the designers will come up with some kind of explanation, but this is something which I don't understand, this design choice. But other than that, there is nothing else in the game where I felt like this did not belong, this didn't fit into the game, or there is nothing that I would think that okay, it's way too much. This could have been left out easily, and it wouldn't even affect the game. There is nothing like that. Everything which is in the game, everything makes sense, everything fits in perfectly, everything makes sense, everything makes a thematic sense, and I really, really appreciate that. It can flow, once you know what you want to do, it can flow pretty quickly, pretty fast, and then everything clicks together and everything works like a perfect oil engine. So I really appreciate that. So overall, when I thought about the game, I had a hard time categorizing the game. Is this a worker placement? Well, it is and it is not, because you don't have your own workers. There are discs, but these discs are in a common supply. You don't have any of your own workers, but you do have cards, and these cards act as workers. So essentially you do have some workers, but the number of workers is actually not limited. If you have more cards, then you can use all of them. So it's a clever design, it is, and it is not a worker placement game, but well, I don't care actually. I had fun. The theme is very refreshing. As I said, it's not a real life theme, it's not a serious theme, it's a playful, joyful graphics and a beautiful visual representation of the theme. I like it a lot. I had fun, and that's the most important thing, so I can highly recommend Sweetlands. Thank you very much for watching. Let me know your comments, how you feel about the game, how do you like this graphic design, how you like the worker placement and the non-worker placement type of this game. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. You've been watching the preview of the game called Sweetlands from Totsuka Chuo, published by Uchiba. My name is Branislav Berec. The link to the campaign will be in the description of the video, and hope to see you next time.